we haven't seen in years will show up at church to ask for prayer once something terrible is going on in their life. But they had opportunities the other 52 weeks out of the year or 51 weeks out of the year. They had opportunity to pray, but they wait until something terrible is going on. Well, God doesn't really care why you reach out to him. He would prefer that we did it because we love him. But if we do it because we're desperate, he doesn't care. The point is, please call on my name because I'm the only one that can save you. So he releases the white horse, which is desire to conquer. Just reviewing from last week. Revelation, the second seal, the desire to destroy. Revelation chapter 6, verse 4.
Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And it was given to him a great sword.
So this second horse goes out, and again, this is from the time from when Jesus was crucified until his second coming. This horse is fiery red, and he's now releasing the desire that's already in us to kill one another. That's different than conquering one another. You can conquer a nation because you like controlling people. But now people are going to start warring and just needlessly slaughtering one another. The third seal, Revelation chapter 6, verse 5.
So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. So this is people who now want to control the earth's resources. I'm going to control the water, I'm going to control the gold, I'm going to control stuff, and charge you ridiculous amounts of money to get it.
I was telling Wayne that this is the 7-Elevens. We were just talking about that. 7-Elevens are popping up, and now China now owns the franchising act. And I said that this is the 7-Elevens. This is the market.
It might be a type of that, and it might be where things are just going to get more expensive, more expensive, more expensive. It says a day's wage just for a quart of wheat, just so you can make some cereal, it's going to cost your whole day's salary. Just for some barley to make some whatever barley makes. I don't know. But it's going to cost your whole salary because, and it's the desire in people to take advantage of others and make them poor so that they can be rich. So you're just going to see many more billionaires and many more people in poverty. Again, if we're already calling out to God, he doesn't have to do this. But he doesn't care. Like as a teacher, I don't care why you study. I'm hoping you'll study because you want to just learn. But if I have to scare you into it, the point is you got to pass this test. Because the test is coming. And you got to pass it. So if I have to scare you to do it, that's fine. So God's like, okay, I tried. I sent my son. I sent the prophets. I've done everything I can. Now the day's coming where you're going to call out to me because you're starving to death. Okay, as long as you call out. Because it's better to starve for a little while than to end up eternity in hell.
So,
yes, sir.
So with people who are already, Christians already calling on God, God is God's hand going to be upon them so it's not going to affect them as much, all this stuff? Or?
Right, it won't affect them as much. But you'll still notice it. But God will send you a warning so you can avoid certain things. Like there's you're driving and there's a sign that says there's a hole in the, if you pay attention, you can avoid certain things. But it says a fourth of the earth, then later says a third, then later says a half, then later says the whole earth. All right? So that's going to be the progression, where it's going to intensify. But again, it's just to make people look up, because we think we can control everything. If you just look at the world in general today, we're kind of godless in general. We think we can control everything. And God's going to say, oh, look, you're not in control of this at all. Oh, that landslide that happened, that fire that happened, that earthquake that happened, you're not in control. You think you're in control. And that's how we've gotten today as man. We have so much technology and things that we think we can control everything. So the point is to get us to reach out to God.
Pastor, I'm avoiding things that keep me away from Christ.
Good. Right, because there are things, our phones can keep us away from praying. You only have an hour to pray. You get lost on your phone or on the internet and say, oh man, I spent 59 minutes, I got a minute left to just say, thank Jesus, and run off. So it's good, because that's that's the devil's job, is to keep us away from him, to distract us. The fourth seal of widespread good, Revelation chapter 6, verse 8.
So I looked and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth.
Yes. Yeah, so Lisa pointed out that this contains a lot of the first ones. Plus there'll be hunger, death, wild beasts, like all this stuff is being loose over a fourth of the earth, so that people feel helpless. Like, wow, what's going on? And sometimes you watch the news and you think, what's going on? People just killing, doing crazy stuff. And it's to make us think, maybe we're in the last days, because I've never seen, there's a flood over here, and a hurricane over there, and an earthquake here, and fire here, and then somebody's walking in to shoot. There's so much calamity happening all at once. It's to make us Lord, because we don't really want to do that. Oh, okay. Because we don't really want to do that. We don't, as a people, we want to think we're totally in control. I'm not talking about us in church. And so God said, I'm going to release these. And this is just the warning shot. So let me outline this for you. Between the time that Jesus was crucified until today, he says he's going to start releasing so that there's more and more calamities, more and more problems like this. Then there is a judgment. There's something called the Day of God's Wrath. This is a specific time period where, and the book of Revelation is going to get more specific about it, a specific time period that we tend to call the tribulation, where we're going to see very specific things. So God's not real specific in these first parts, just saying there's general famine, general sort of, but there's a specific period that we have labeled the tribulation. Some people think it's a 7-year period, some people think it's a 3.5-year period, where God is going to have his judgments very specifically. We're going to see the Antichrist, there's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to see. And then Armageddon. What's Armageddon? You know what Armageddon is?
World War III?
Basically. Then there's a series of armies that are going to march on Israel. That all in the Middle East. There's going to be a huge war in the Middle East. That will be the war to end all wars. At the end of that period.
World War I?
Yeah, but not like World War I, obviously, but it ended all wars. This one will end them. And literally, after this war, we will see Christ in the sky. So he's going to generally release a bunch of judgments, a bunch of warnings. Then there's this time period that could be 7 years, could be 3.5 years, called the Day of God's Wrath, where we're going to see an Antichrist arise. A person arrives who's going to declare himself to be the Messiah. And he's going to lead a war against Israel. There'll be a huge war in the Middle East. At the end of that war, Christ will show up. We'll see, all eyes will see him in the sky. That's like our final exam. So all of this is leading up to that. And first he's very general in the book of Revelation, and then he gets more specific, so that we as Christians will recognize the signs. Yes, sir.
I have a question about hail wars and fighting misses.
No. Hail is like great. What?
Explain that it's a color that's close to a pale green.
Okay. It looks sickly.
Sickly.
Like me?
No. So, white, like a sheep, like when you get married on your wedding day, we wouldn't say that bride looked kind of pale. She looks beautiful in white, right?
Amen.
Pale because he's bringing starvation, right? So it's sickly. It's like all the color's been drained from it. Okay, that's the idea. Yes, ma'am.
So, question when it's
sat on it was death. Would this be considered like the death angel, like when the Israelites who were going through the Pharaoh stuff and
Right.
the death angel came?
Right.
Okay, okay.
So it's not just a calamity, but you see whole villages wiped out with a plague or a disease, like a horse is riding through. And it's just death is coming. This death is coming. For a while, like when the AIDS epidemic first hit, it's like, wow, people are just getting wiped out.
Right.
So it's that kind of thing that's going to be released. Now, this is being released against a rebellious world that's not calling out on Jesus.
So you think like ISIS or anything, that's part of these judgments? You know, where they kill up, you know?
Possibly, because it talks. One of the horses talks about taking peace from the earth and people wanting to kill one another. That desire, because I think it's a little different today than earlier, where people are willing to blow themselves up just to blow you up. I think that's different. I don't think we used to do that. But it's a desire to kill. I want to kill you so bad. I don't care if we all blow up. And so things like that are just getting worse.
Well,
Yes, sir.
also, they're just doing it in the name of God. They feel that they're doing it for God, for what they think.
Right, but ISIS may not. I just want to talk about the attitude.
Or they have a joke.
Not that I think they're in the Bible. I don't know. This could happen 100 years from now. There'll be a whole other group doing something different. Right. But it's that sort of attitude of just wanting to kill a whole bunch of the people. So that's ISIS, but just here in America, the people who just walk in and start shooting everybody have nothing to do with ISIS. So it's just the idea that you're just killing people for no reason. We're seeing more of that than ever before, right? So now, the fifth seal, the cry of the martyrs.
When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar of the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held.
So there are Christians who over the 2,000 years since Christ have stood up for Christ and say, no, we should, and have been slain. Now, again, we read this last week, so this is just a quick review. They say, how long, O Lord, before we're avenged, before you bring judgment on the world? And it turns out that we were right and they were wrong. Because at the time, it looks like they're wrong. They're saying, no, you should have for Jesus, and they're killed. And everyone laughs at them. He says, when is that going to be balanced? So that they have to stand up and get judgment. And in the scripture, it says, after the 144,000 are sealed. So here's, okay. So,
Does that go back to the scale part?
no, they want balance, but the scale is simple.
No, it wasn't balance, but I'm just saying, is it the parallel, like, okay, this person, this black horse is gonna have a pair of scales in his hand, and then down here it says, when are we going to be revenged? Then
Right, when's it going to be balanced? It's similar, that it's two different things.
okay, got it.
So 12, he said, is the number as far as people are concerned, as far as completion is concerned. There were 12 disciples. There were 12 children of Israel. So when he talks, whenever you see the number 12, it means all of us. You see the number 7, that's symbolic of everything that God is going to do, his complete work. That's why there's 7 seals, 7 trumpets. We're going to read about the 7 vials. This means 7, this is his complete work. The number 12 refers to all, it doesn't mean that it just has to be just 12, but whenever you see 12 times 12, 144, that means all those people, all the people. So 144,000 Jews, I don't know that it's exactly 144,000, it just means there's a whole big group of Jews who do not believe in Jesus right now, but they love God. They're seeking after him. On the day of Armageddon, when that big war happens in the Middle East, the unbelieving Jews will be killed. So we're going to see Israel destroyed, but there will be 144,000 Jews who are saved through that.
So should be Israelites, because Jews are just the one tribe.
Well, okay. No, that's helping me more specific. There's 144,000 Israelites. Now, do you know why he's bringing up the difference? Of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, Israel was his name, right? There's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob changed his name to Israel. We're talking about the 12 children of Israel, meaning the 12 children of that one guy. One of his sons was named Judah. The other 11 tribes all had different names. The children of Judah, they remained faithful, they stayed in Israel. We call them Jews. The other 11 tribes, they all got dispersed. And it's hard for us to keep up with where they are. We think we know where they are. They're Israelites, but they're not specifically called Jews. We don't call them Jews. So, yes?
You meant 10, because...
I know Benjamin, I'm too, okay.
I'm too specific, but...
Okay. So it's just easier to explain it in a certain way because I don't have that much time.
Okay, gotcha.
So they're still the children of Israel. And so it's hard to tell when it talks about 144,000 if it's specifically all just the Jews in Israel or if it's some of these other people who are also out there who no longer call themselves Jews, who no longer are connected, but they're still part of that line. Does that make sense? They're still part of that line. So there's 144,000 of that group. It may be specifically the people who are in Israel who know that they're Jews and are calling out, or it may be 1,000 from here and 1,000 from Spain and 1,000 from France. But there's 144,000 people who believe in God devoutly. They just don't think that Jesus is Lord. They're going to have a change. And they are going to realize, you know how Scripture says they'll look on him who they pierced, and they will mourn. They'll realize, oh my God, Jesus was Lord all along. God is saving them. He's saving them because they're going to have a change of heart. So when the martyrs ask how long, he says not until that 144,000 are sealed in their forehead. Now, when the Bible talks about sealing in your hand and your forehead, it means how you think. There's not literally a stamp that's going to be in their head. If you see any Christian tracts or something like that, they think that there's actually going to be a 666 stamped on people's heads. But when the Bible talks about, I want you to hide this in your heart and in your head, it means there's a certain way you need to think, and it talks about your hands. There's certain things you need to do. So if you're doing my work, if you are thinking about me and doing, then I've sealed your head and your hands because you're doing what I want you to do. So we're not going to look for people that have something tattooed on them, but whose minds are fixed on God. So he says, I'm sealing those 144,000. Once I identify those 144,000, then the day of judgment comes. That 7-year period, or maybe 3.5-year period, where God, where we see the Antichrist rise. There'll be a world leader that will rise, like Hitler, will rise and will lead a revolt in the Middle East. There'll be a huge war in the Middle East. So when they say how long, he says not until they're ready. Yes, sir.
You explained something that all is going on. If I look at you, everything's covered on the head, hands, and your feet. You just share with us again. About the feet. But that's it. Hold on, I'm taking you off before you speak.
Well, no, I mean, just specifically, the Bible talks, it mentions the feet, how beautiful on the mountain are the feet of those who run to do good news, to spread the good news, to do good works. It's the same sort of thing. God is talking about, are you always going to do good? Are you always going to do with your hands? Is your mind always, God will keep you in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. So he's waiting for those 144,000 people who are committed themselves to God. Then Jesus is going to reveal to them that he's the Messiah. And they'll be part of the army fighting the Antichrist. So that's the cry of the martyrs. The sixth seal. This takes place during that tribulation period.
Yeah, maybe.
Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 through 14 and verse 17.
I looked when I opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand?
So now we're in that time period. So God has released all those warnings, and now the day of his wrath has come. And there'll be specific things that happen, natural disasters that are going to happen, that will be a sign that we are in that tribulation period where the Antichrist will rise. So there'll be a sign with the moon and the sun. There might be a total eclipse. There's going to be a great earthquake. There's certain signs that are going to happen that are specific events, not general events. Because before we talked about nations going out and conquering other nations, those have happened for thousands of years. So it's going to be these are going to be specific events that are going to happen where people will recognize we were in that time period called the day of God's wrath, where the Antichrist is going to rise and lead a war, and then Armageddon will happen, which is the final war, and then Jesus will appear. Here's the seventh seal, Revelation chapter 8, verse 1 and then verse 6.
When he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the seven angels which come before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. So the 7 angels who had 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound.
So I interpret the silence in heaven as, because John's just watching all this and trying to interpret it for us. He's seeing all this happen. So you have all these warnings sent out. Then you have the day of God's wrath, that time period. Again, a day doesn't mean literally a 24-hour period. It just means the time period of God's wrath. Then peace. So the Bible talks about the millennium. Because when Jesus shows up again, at the end of the Armageddon War, when Jesus shows up, and we actually will meet him in the sky. That's when we meet him in the sky. And the war is over pretty quick. Once Jesus shows up and we're caught up together with him, then he takes care of, defeats all of Israel's enemies, and ushers in what's called the millennium, a 1,000-year period of peace, where Jesus will actually be on the earth reigning, fulfilling all the Old Testament prophecies, where they're waiting for the Messiah. They're always waiting for Jesus to kill all of Israel's enemies and then rule. So he's going to do that for a 1,000-year period. During that 1,000-year period, the devil is going to be trapped. People still will rebel. It's shocking. It's not, we don't understand it. How you can see Jesus ruling and still decide, I don't want him to be my Lord. But there will be people who still, they don't want Jesus as Lord. The devil is released at the end of this millennial period of peace. And he wages one final war, he and his angels and all of his followers, against Christ. Now obviously he loses. And at the end of that war, which I would call Armageddon 2, at the end of that war, that's when he opens up Hades, and the devil and everyone who followed him, it goes to hell. So I interpret that period of silence being that period of peace. I think he's laying out the whole outline for us. A lot of warnings, you're going to see fires and earthquakes, things happening. Then you're going to see this time period where the Antichrist rise and leads a fight against him. Then this period of peace. And then the final battle, not the Antichrist, but actually Satan, trying to complete what he did in the very beginning, where he tried to exalt his throne against God, trying to complete that. But he will be defeated and put into the lake of fire, and that's when everybody will go to hell, and the judgment will stand before. We won't stand before the judgment throne. We who already love Christ have already been judged. So we just get our crowns, which we lay before his feet. But everyone else, the books are open, and when their names are not written in the book of life, they have to follow the devil into hell.
So is that what you're saying? That we have already, those that follow Christ, names have already, that our names are written in the Lamb's book of life.
Right.
And so we won't be judged?
We've already been judged. If we
Continue to do.
if we love Jesus,
Right, and then-
we've already made our choice. And so when we stand before the judgment seat of Christ, we're simply given the rewards, either wood, hay, and stubble, meaning you love Jesus, but you never did what he told them to do. So all your works are just hay, wood, and stubble and burned up. Or look, here's the time that you did actually obey him, and this is where you're getting gold, silver. So all our works are just judged in front of him, and we get our crowns. So we just walk up and get our crowns. Next. Oops, just stop it. Oops, next. Right? So it's not like God judges us, because we've decided to take on his reward. So again, it's like if I'm a teacher and say, I'm just going to give the test to Lisa. And if she passes the test, you can all get on her score, or you can try to get in on your own. We've all said, we're going to get on Jesus' score. He already passed the test. So we're taking that. So we've already made our choice. So God's not going to stand and judge us at that point. He's simply going to reward us. But everyone else who thought, I don't need Jesus, I can do it on myself, they will stand before the great white throne judgment. And when their names are not written in the book of life, that's when they'll have to follow the devil into hell. So there's two different times, two different quote-unquote judgments. One for Christians, one for non-believers. But our judgment, we've already been judged, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So now we're looking at the 7 trumpets. These are specific things that are happening during the day of judgment. Specific signs that are going to happen during that tribulation period when the Antichrist rises. So the first trumpet, Revelation chapter 8, verse 7.
The first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, and there was a flood, and they were thrown to the earth. And a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up.
Right. So you're going to see, we see fires now happening, but you're going to see wildfires during that time period that are uncontrollable. Where a third of the trees are burned up and all the, so we think we're devastated now when we see a certain region. It's like all the forests in California are going to catch a fire all at the same time, if that makes sense. During this tribulation period.
This book always
What sometimes is referred to as Great Tribulation.
This book always
The second trumpet, the seas.
Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed.
Now, he says it was like a great mountain burning. Have you seen these huge volcanoes?
Yes.
Where the lava, it looks like an entire mountain is on fire, right? So I'm imagining that I'm John, and God's showing me this, and he's describing it the best way he can. He said it's something like a mountain was burning and on fire. So if there's an island somewhere that has a huge volcano, there's a couple that we're waiting to erupt, or did a couple erupt in the past couple of years, I feel like.
One in Hawaii was erupted like a couple weeks ago.
Oh, right. And I remember last year or the year before, another volcano erupted and kind of burned a couple villages. So it's going to be that sort of thing where an uncontrollable volcano is going to happen and destroy and won't be able to be stopped. Like Pompeii that destroyed. Right. So we're going to see that sign during this time period. And a third of the sea creatures will be destroyed. A third of the ships in the ocean will be destroyed. This again will be a sign that we're in that tribulation period. So we're going to see things like God has slowly been turning it up, like you turn on an oven. But during this time period, there'll be mass destruction. Mass destruction. Let's look at Revelation chapter 8, verse 10.
When the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was made bitter.
So, I'm thinking from what this has, we've been reading all the scriptures, that something like a meteorite or a comet is going to hit. Many have been close to hitting the earth, but at this point, one is actually going to hit, and it says a third of the rivers. He's calling it wormwood. Wormwood just means poisonous, basically. And it's going to poison or destroy a third of the oceans from this meteor hitting the earth. Now, the reason these things are happening is because these are not man-made. The earlier judgments, the earlier warnings that were happening were the evil in men being released. But these particular things, only God can do them.
Wow.
Because he's letting people know, I exist. You've been ignoring me all this time. I've sent you warnings, I sent you prophets, you could have read the book of Revelation any time. So now things are happening beyond your control. Again, so that people will cry out, because the day is coming when people will be thrown into hell. So he's got to do, the Bible in Jude says, some saved with fear. And if that's what you have to do to keep people from hell, then God feels good about that. For us, it's like spanking a child. If you try to tell your child, please don't run across the street without looking, because little kids just, they don't think cars hit people, you know, and the ball, and they'll just run across. And so you might have to spank them to really let them know, you've got to listen to me. I'm trying to save your life. I know the spanking is hurting you for now, but it's going to save your life later, right? And that's what God is doing. These are horrible disasters, but if they make you cry out to me, it's going to save your soul from spending eternity in the lake of fire. So, yes, this is horrible, but if it makes you cry out to search for God, he's good with it. The fourth trumpet, the heavens are struck.
Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of the heavens, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound.
So interestingly enough, after earthquakes and fires and volcanoes and meteorites hitting the earth during this time period, again, it's the warning shot, because there is an antichrist coming who's going to fool many people. So God is saying in advance, here are all the things that are going to happen, so you'll recognize. So when this false Messiah comes, you won't follow him. But interesting enough, he's saying, you're not even ready for the last three. I know that was big, but an angel flew through and said these last three who sounded with the trumpet are going to surpass everything. So, the fifth trumpet, the locust from the bottomless pit.
Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star falling from heaven to the earth. He was given the key of the bottomless pit, and he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit, like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke locusts came up from the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. The torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days, men will seek death and will not find it, They will desire to die and death will flee from them.
Now, so before you turn away from this picture,
Wow.
my interpretation, because this, it sounds like nuclear warfare to me. To me, doesn't mean it is. It could literally be a star. But I'm John from the 1st century trying to describe 22nd century things, right? 2,000 years beyond. So I am seeing things that I've never seen before. I see this, like if they were to shoot a nuclear weapon, right, and it hit, it would come down from the sky. I, John, have never seen something come down from the sky. My assumption is it's a star.
Yeah.
Because there are no airplanes during his day, so only things that are in the sky are stars. We're not able to shoot satellites and things. So if a satellite fell to the earth, if I lived in the 1st century and saw a satellite fall to the earth, I'd say, oh, a star fell to the earth, right? Because that's the only term I would have to describe it. Or if I saw a nuclear bomb fall to the earth, I would say, call it a star. Because that's the only thing that I know that are in the heavens. If I saw one of these war helicopters with its wings, with its blades going, right, and the shape of it, I might describe it as a locust. And I would say it had the power like a scorpion to sting people, because that's what a scorpion does. Yet, and we were talking about this last week, it's just, they've changed warfare now so that they're releasing chemicals and releasing weapons that only kill people. They're tired of killing buildings, right? They don't want to destroy buildings and have to build them up again. So I'd rather just release certain gases, release certain things that will just kill people. So it says, to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth had power. Verse 4, they were commanded not to hurt the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Now, in Israel, so I don't know how they got to Israel. That's why I'm calling saying that they might be Jews. There's going to be 144,000 in Israel. And when the attack comes, there are certain people who are saved. Other people are killed all around them. But the buildings aren't harmed, etc., but the people are killed. You want to say something? Oh, good. Yes, sir.
Previously, you mentioned that literally they made that written on their forehead here, we don't mean.
No. When it says the seal of God on their forehead, in Old Testament scriptures, when it talks about, I want you to write this on your heart, it didn't literally take a pen and write it on your heart, right? So you're not looking for people who have something written literally on their heart. It means it's in your heart. It's the same sort of language that they're using. They're using Old Testament language. That it's sealed in your forehead. When God would say that, He means that you're constantly thinking about Him. In your hands, it means you're constantly doing what He wants you to do. So you're not going to see people that have tattoos on their forehead. But it means that people whose minds are stayed on Him, they'll be saved. But all the rest will be killed in this big war that's going on. So it's a huge war. So I just have these pictures because if I was from the 1st century and saw this, I'd say, oh my God, they were giant locusts, right? That's me. I'm just saying that's how I would interpret that. You want to say something?
It says that death will flee from them. They'll seek death and they'll try to kill themselves, but they won't be able to kill themselves. They won't be able to suicide.
Right, because they're sick, the poison. We released, Ernest was reminding us last week that people are breaking laws now, that these poisons that they're putting out are devastating people. They're sick, their bodies are falling apart, but they're not dying. They'll want to die as opposed to living how they're living with all their insides eaten out and stuff like that. So it's saying, just in my theory, the type of poisons and things that are being released, people will wish they were dead as opposed to living like they're living. It's like when people first were getting AIDS. Some of them just wanted to go ahead and die. There was a lot of assisted suicides because people were seeking death. instead of living, their whole body was depleted. That's why we got this big assisted suicide controversy, right? Because people are trying to help their friends die. And that's a new thing, right? People weren't trying to do that in the 15th century, in the 12th century. It's just in this past century that people have started to get so ill that they would prefer to die than live in the condition they're in. So that's possibly what they're talking about. Okay. So again, if I was in the first century and saw this, later on it talks about the locusts having faces. And I just picked this picture. But if you're in one of these, if you're driving one of these things, then you're a locust with a face. It says it had a man's face. Now, easily, God could just release giant locusts that have men's faces. I don't have a problem with that. But also, John could have been looking at this century, or 50 years from now, and seeing these stealth things flying, hundreds and thousands of them, going and taking people out and shooting at them, right? He talks about the power being in their mouth. Like he said, you got to understand, because you know what I'm talking about when they have these guns. The power's in their mouth and in their tail. So I imagine guns, I imagine tanks that have those long, yes?
The only thing is you said that the first seals were all men and the trumpets are all God things. So if it's helicopters and men in them, then that's from man, that's from God.
So, two things. The first four are separate from the next three. So separate them. So don't say, but you said this about that. It doesn't apply to the next three. That's why he stopped in the middle and said, whoa, 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 because these other three are different.
Yeah.
If they were the same, he wouldn't have stopped in the middle and said, these are different. So let it be different in your head. I'm trying to teach something different than how you've been taught about this. So the first four are definitely God doing stuff to warn us about this time we're about to enter in. Because during this period, actual men and Antichrist are going to get up and men are going to be doing things to each other. God sees it happening. So he's trying to warn people so that you know when you get in this area, you're going to see the sun darken, you're going to see great tornadoes, volcanoes, you're going to see fire. So now you know you're in this time period because for some reason this Antichrist is going to come and promise peace. And people will be fooled. You'll have followers that will follow this person no matter what he does. No comments. No matter what he does, they're going to follow this person. And when he starts killing people, they're still going to follow this person because they believe in this person. So the initial warnings were there so that we recognize when an Antichrist type figure shows up. Now this is what men are going to be doing to one another. So it could be locusts. It could be giant locusts with men's faces. I'm just saying it also could be John looking at what we have today, and if he sees a war, it could be a bomb that fell as opposed to a star. It could be one of these military things that he's seeing and he's simply trying to describe. Because he's describing now the war. Right, okay. So, let's look at Revelation chapter 8, verse 7 through 12.
The shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men.
So, okay, horses prepared for battle. This is a new thing for John. Men started to prepare for battle at this time by wearing iron. This was a new thing during John's day. But he says they were like horses prepared for battle. So if I live in the first century and I'm given a preview of the 21st century or the 22nd century or whenever this is going to happen, if I were to see cars and things, I might describe them as horses with iron. Because that's when it's prepare for battle, that's what he means. Because men who prepare for battle suddenly put on iron. So if I'm seeing these things move, in the first century, it's like a horse prepared for battle, like it was all made of iron. Right? It could easily be a horse prepared for battle. But it could also be a tank. Right? That's how I would describe a tank if I lived in the first century. It was like, because it's moving, people are riding on it. All I know is people ride on horses. Does that make sense? So if we're suddenly transferred 5 centuries from now, we're going to see something that was like a television, but it was on their arms. Because all we have to describe is what we know. It was like a phone, but it was in their ear. You know what I'm saying? We don't have the other words to describe it. So we're going to say it's like this, it's like that. So it says it's like a horse. So if you can imagine a tank, to me, this is me, made of iron, you say that's like a horse compared to battle. It says, but their faces were the faces of men. So this is God creating this incredible creature, a horse made of iron, and putting a man's face on it? Or is there a man inside of a tank? And John's trying to say their faces were men, they're like men inside this horse. There were men inside the locusts who had faces. Does that make sense? And they got helmets on, and the helmets have a light on them and like fire. He's trying to describe, to me, again, God is free to create this incredible creature, but this also may just be John describing him seeing stuff from our day.
Next week.
So they had hair like women's hair. Go ahead, verse 8.
They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like a sound of chariots with many horses running into battle.
So if you've heard, well, just if you lived in a black neighborhood, and you hear just helicopters overhead,
all night long.
it sounds like horses running about. It's loud. And John's trying to describe the sound, right? Because they're coming in, and that's all. Nothing in his world sounded this loud, other than horses when they're ready to go to battle. So if you're looking at a helicopter and somebody's in it, and they've got the gun out, and then the sound of its wings was like horses. So God can make really loud locusts, or they could have been these military things. So I'm just putting that into mind that John may be describing stuff from our day, or from 50 years from now, or 100 years from now. Verse 10.
They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men 5 years. 5 months, I'm sorry. And they had as kings over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon. What is it? Abaddon.
Yeah.
But in the Greek, his name was Apollyon. One whose woe is past. One woe is past. Behold, still 2 more woes are coming after these things.
Right. So this just means his name was bad guy, bad news, basically. He's just giving. It's like the name of the horse that followed him to death. Or he's just trying to describe. Their king was evil, basically. And so when I hear that the power was in their tails, again, if I saw a tank, or if I saw a helicopter that had those long guns on them, guns, I would describe it as a tail. And that the power came out of those, and it was shooting men, not destroying buildings, but hurting men and poisoning them. Because that's the latest thing. They're going to be shooting poison gas as opposed to shooting bullets, because we don't want to destroy buildings anymore. We want to take over places and not have to spend billions of dollars rebuilding. So we're finding ways just to kill people instead of to kill buildings. Yes, sir?
It's like when Bush was president and he sent people in Iraq to fight, young men, they all died at an early age.
They did what?
They died on the battlefield. They didn't know they were fighting for.
Right, that's true. I mean, when sometimes people who are sent off to battle are just being obedient. And he's trying to make sure, the writer, is that we're not just being obedient to this Antichrist, that we're not just following him. So they're trying to give us the warning signs.
This is, I can find this actual verse. It doesn't look like it's Revelation 8:7 through 12.
I don't have a,
Okay.
are you in 8 or 9 or 7?
I mean, it says 8:7 through 12.
But it's not the correct
It's not
one.
the correct one.
Oh, I might have put 8 and then it's really 9.
It's 9, okay, and 7. Yep, and the shapes of locusts, okay.
All right,
Okay, I'm sorry, all that is 9.
okay.
It's just my bad typing.
7.
Oh, right. When the 5th trumpet sounded, you know this picture of the, it says 9 there.
Oh, it says 9.
So all the rest should be 9 starting on this page.
Oh,
I just wrote in 8 because I was not paying attention.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. For people who want to go home and read some of this stuff. Okay, so the 6th trumpet, the angels from the Euphrates. If you lived in Israel, all your enemies who were coming from the east, not the Egyptians who were coming from the south, but all of your other enemies, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Persians, all of them, they had to cross the river Euphrates to get to you. And so that was a sign. If you saw people crossing the river Euphrates, that was a sign that you were in trouble. So they're using that same imagery because, again, he's writing to the Jews. He's writing mostly to the Jews. Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 21.
Then the 6th angel.
And I heard
Are you reading?
There's two people reading, him and Denise.
Oh, you go ahead.
Okay. Then the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the 4 angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind.
Okay, so if I'm Jewish, I go, uh-oh.
Right.
They're about to cross the river Euphrates. That's what that means to the Jewish mind, to the Jewish reader. That there are 4 angels who are waiting to be released, and now they've been released. That means the enemy is coming. This says mankind, but could also just be translated man. So we're not sure, people who are studying, if they're really talking about a third of the earth or a third of Israel. When it talks about the earth, that can be translated land. And so some of these things may only be happening in the Middle East and not all over the world. So it says kill a third of mankind, but really it should just say kill a third of the men, the persons who were there. When it talks about, as he wiped out a third of the earth, it should be translated a third of the land. And I'm of the opinion that they're largely talking about just the Middle East. We will see what's going on. I'm not trying to release us. But it's not really the entire earth. But it's mostly the Iran, Syria, all these places that are in the Middle East that are near Israel that are currently Israel's enemies. That are currently. So just know that it's not necessarily a third of mankind is going to be wiped out, and maybe a third of the people specifically in the Middle East.
Okay.
We'll still suffer the repercussions, but because we'll see what's going on, but it may not be all of us. Verse 15.
Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision. Those who sat on them had breastplates of fiery red,
Hyacinth
blue, and sulfur yellow. And the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions. And out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone.
So for me, this could be tanks, because he saw horses in this vision, and those who sat on them had breastplates and of fire. Basically, fire was coming out of them. If you've seen a fire has red, yellow, and blue in it. So fire, now he's never seen this, right, in his day. They've never seen fire come out of a weapon. They have swords and knives. There might be a few guns, but he's never seen what we can do today, where fire comes out. And he's trying to describe what he's seeing. So for me, it's possibly a bunch of tanks. And he said their heads, of course, were like heads of lions, and out of their mouth came fire, smoke, and brimstone. So again, it could be fire, smoke, and brimstone, or it could be what we see on a field. We've seen just whole fields wiped out. Fire comes out of them. Again, a first century man describing this is going to say, out of their mouths, you know, out of those, yes sir?
Couldn't this be something we've never seen before either?
Right, it could be 50 years from now, exactly. So this is not necessarily happening tomorrow.
Okay.
But yeah, there could be machines, things, you know, that we haven't even seen before, This could take place 100 years from now. We only know that we're in the time period near it because Israel was destroyed in the first century and all the Jews were banished. A lot of Revelations talks about the Jews being back in Israel and a lot of this stuff happening to him as we get farther in. So this can only begin once Israel becomes a nation again. So for 2,000 years, all this stuff in Revelations was like way away. But in 1948, the Jews were allowed to go back to Israel, and so now Israel's at the focal point of a lot of our policies and a lot of what's going on in the world again. So we know we're in that time period. Again, it can still be 20 years from now, 100 years from now, before all of this starts to happen. But because Israel's become a nation, that's the signal that we're at least the generations that can see the beginning of this happening.
Does that have anything to do with what Trump now making Jerusalem the capital?
Well, a little bit. Not that he, you know.
I'm just saying that part.
But yes,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything that happens now, where the Jews are doing things in Israel that's upsetting their neighbors, comes closer to making this kind of war happen. These 200 million people are advancing, and 200 million could just be an exaggeration on his part. But a huge army is now advancing on Israel. And again, it gets more specific as we go. So he's just giving us a general idea. With the next things as we go succeeding chapters, he gets more specific about what's happening. Yes, sir?
Okay, you say when Israel become a nation again.
When Israel became a nation again, it wasn't one, but when we saw it become a nation again.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to say. Wasn't Israel recognized as a nation again in 1948?
In 1948, yes.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning. Like I said, most of this in Revelation seemed like a fantasy, a fairy tale, because Israel had been disbanded, and for 2,000 years they were trying to kill the Jews. There was no way they were going to get back together. So the book of Revelation was an impossible thing. But in 1948, Israel became a nation again. So now all these things can happen. So we know that we're closer than we ever were to seeing these events. It doesn't mean it's going to happen next year, but now it can happen because of what happened 70 years ago. Oh, okay, so we're almost done. You were reading verse 19. No, by 18. By these three plagues.
By these three plagues, a third of mankind was killed by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone which came out of their mouths.
So he's calling those plagues. The fire, the smoke, the brimstone that came out of their mouths. Again, it could be horses that breathe fire, smoke, and brimstone, or it could be some sort of machinery that he's calling horses that's spewing out this sort of stuff. We now have this sort of thing that we've seen. We've seen this. All this stuff that's happening, being described in Revelations, we've now seen it. It could be worse, like Ernest is saying, but we now have machines that spit out fire, smoke, and brimstone and kill and destroy. Go ahead.
For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails are like serpents having heads, and with them they do harm.
Right.
But the rest of mankind, who were not killed by these plagues, did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which can neither see, nor hear, nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders, or their sorceries, or their sexual immorality, or their thefts.
So even though all this war is going on and all this stuff, people still don't repent. They still don't turn to God. They're still worshiping their idols. Now it says idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood. That could be phones. What are people worshiping other than God? Big, huge televisions in Times Square and people all standing and hearing the word of whoever. You know, I don't want to pick on something. I'm just saying, people still don't repent and turn to God. They still worship their buildings, their things, all their man-made stuff. And they're still on turning, and they're still depending on stuff that they created with their hands. In the old days, it was literal idols that looked like people. Now it's just, it's still things that we've created. People are worshiping them and depending on them. Let me turn to the weather girl. And we all do it. Let me look at my phone to see if it's going to rain tomorrow. But we used to have to pray. Seriously, you have these Lord, and we wait for God to tell you if you take an umbrella or not. But now we can just do this. So we just have to be careful how much we're depending on other stuff. But as a culture, we're depending. I let the GPS girl tell me how to get to some place. I used to have to pray. And, Lord, help me find this house. But now I don't need God. So I have the white woman riding my car. So as a country, as a world, we're just... So God's like, let me do all these signs so people will start worshiping me again. And say, oh, Lord. So now we turn to the news, if we're smart, we say, Jesus, help us, we must be in the last days. Or we think, oh, we can fix that because we know how to do it. And we just worship ourselves. So these are just the beginning of the warnings. It's going to get more specific as we go along about this tribulation period called the day of God's wrath, and exactly what's going to happen so that we recognize the Antichrist when he shows up. So are there any questions? Okay, yes?
Would they not repent because we're so used to that stuff by that time and they just sort of poo-poo it?
Right, we're not going to, we'll be so used to all the killing and the murder and the death, people won't turn to God. It says, despite all that, people don't go, help me, Jesus. They just think, oh my God, people are just crazy. But we're supposed to think, no, that's the devil. People are being demon-possessed, walking in and doing the stuff that people are doing and just killing people like they are, walking into school. That's demons. Or we can just say, okay, that's just how people are. So he's doing all this, hoping that we'll understand that it's him and not be so used to it that we just, oh well, that's how it happens.
You take care of this.
Right, we get desensitized. Exactly. Okay, let's bow our heads. Father, we just